and welcome to this special edition of Franklin Covey's On Leadership series. My name is Scott Miller, and I'm privileged to serve as the host of what is now Franklin Covey's largest podcast each week. And as I was talking with our board of directors, our chairman, our president, and the executive team in the last few weeks, we've thought a lot about what can we do to help our employees worldwide, our valued customers, and for that matter, anybody who's looking to Franklin Covey for some wisdom, some guidance, some calm in this world of giant whirlwind. We thought what we could do is interview 4 of our key thought leaders on where they thought these principles that leaders can bring to bear in this time of, literally changing by the hour uncertainty. Now for our conversation with Chris McChesney. Many of you may know that Chris McChesney serves as the lead author of Franklin Covey's #1 Wall Street Journal bestselling book, The 4 Disciplines of Execution. Chris, thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Scott.
Hey, so Chris, I want to kind of narrow down on 2 points. One, I want to talk about focus and then morale and engagement. You've spent the better part of the last 20 years of your nearly 30-year career here with Franklin Covey, teaching, listening, learning, refining the power of focus with senior leaders in the midst of what right now is, massively uncertain times. A phrase that you and your co-authors coined, the whirlwind. What advice would you give everybody listening, both in their professional and personal lives, at bringing some of these principles to bear around focusing in on top priorities?
Yeah, I think when it comes to focus, we need to understand that under normal circumstances, everything inside the organization wants to dilute focus. Right? And everyone knows that it's incredibly important to get focus. However, once you're in a situation like we are now, when ambiguity goes up, a person's ability to maintain focus becomes that much more difficult. So I think right off the bat, understanding focus is more important than ever, and it just got a whole lot harder.
Chris, we know this adage of, 10,000 hours on a topic makes someone an expert. Well, you've got about 10 million hours on this concept of connecting engagement and morale to focus and discipline. What advice would you give our viewers and listeners on how to keep morale high in this very uncertain time full of ambiguity?
Yeah. Here's a catchphrase I want you to think about. Whirlwind +1, okay? Whirlwind means everything I have to do every day just to maintain the operation. +1 is that area of focus that I have to put deliberate, non-urgent energy against. And if you can just keep that in mind, in 3,000 attempts, with working with organizations at the 4 disciplines and maintaining focus, what we've learned is it's not whirlwind +1 for the whole organization, but for each working unit, if they've got their day job plus one area of focus. And let me give you a little background on this. One of the things that we started to understand was that people have a minimal ability to handle ambiguity. And that when ambiguity increases in one part of their lives, they have less tolerance for ambiguity in another. And this has been proven. There's actually a wonderful book on this topic called Nonsense, the Power of Not Knowing. And it's how human beings handle ambiguity, how they handle not knowing. And I think it's really important that leaders are very clear on what's happening to all of their employees. I'll just give you a quick anecdote. I find this fascinating. But in the early 1900s, when San Francisco was hit by that terrible earthquake, 2 things happened that puzzled sociologists for years. The first thing that happened was divorce rates took off. The second thing happened was that marriage rates took off. And for decades, sociologists argued about whether a natural disaster and trauma caused people to go apart from each other in divorce or together in marriage. And then they figured out what was really happening. What was really happening was the earthquake and all of the trauma that went with it burned out people's ability to handle ambiguity. They couldn't take any more ambiguity in their life. So if they were thinking about getting a divorce, they couldn't leave the question hanging. They got a divorce. If they were thinking about marriage, they got married. And that's why they both shot up. When people take on a new goal, it presents ambiguity. The day job, the whirlwind, that I can manage, that, right? It's coming at me fast, I'm responding to it, but at least I know it. It's what I know. New goals represent uncertainty. We don't know how we're going to do them. And this is why putting too many goals on a team causes it to sort of paralyze or to retreat back to the day job, to the whirlwind. And I think what leaders have to understand is when there's been a massive amount of ambiguity injected into their lives on every front, right? This is uncharted territory for us right now, that it's even harder to focus and maintain, a goal attention when that thing represents ambiguity. So more than ever, the ability to keep clear those things we have to maintain from the one thing per team that team can focus on, I think is a very healthy mindset to have in these times.
Hey, Chris, from all your experience, is there any practical advice you might give a leader on how to help clarify ambiguity? Because we're all going through it, right? We're asking ourselves, is our kids' school going to close, right? Am I going to meet payroll? Am I going to be asked to take a reduction in my income? How do we make sure that our stock stops cratering? Should I buy food for a month or for a week? What advice would you give leaders on how to distract adding to ambiguity when in fact, perhaps through a couple of behaviors or disciplines, they could in fact bring clarity to everyone, even on maybe one or two specific vital topics?
Yeah, so again, recognize all the energy wants to go back to just sort of maintaining the day job, almost a defensive position. In terms of that area of focus, if you can get that into a very clear, very defined target, and it doesn't have to represent everything that the team is doing. Matter of fact, I was just doing this morning. I'm working with one of our marketing groups, and the whole morning we spent talking about one very clear finish line, like one achievable goal amidst an ocean of crazy, amidst an ocean of uncertainty. Is there a starting line? Is there a finish line? And is there a deadline? And here's the thing that we didn't know 20 years ago. If there's even one element in a person's life where they feel like I'm winning and it matters, okay? That alone, even if the rest, there's a lot of chaos. If there's just one element where a person feels like I'm winning and it matters, you'll see a spike in morale and engagement. So I guess if you put a wrapper around this whole thing, if there's a clear winnable game, and it can be a very specific thing, it doesn't have to represent everything. There's a clear winnable game, and if we've minimized ambiguity by not dogpiling multiple new objectives on top of people, if we can keep those two things clear, I've got a winnable game, and it's that winnable game plus the day job that I know human beings can handle that. And not only can they handle that, one of the other things that this work on ambiguity taught us is that people actually have to have a little bit, right? They have to have something that does challenge them. Now there's a lot going on in the environment that does challenge us. But if there's one winnable game, in addition to what I know, we're not dogpiling, and I feel I can win at something. That's very healthy, very encouraging, and I think gives you the best opportunity to maintain focus and continue to execute in tough times, which is a really hard thing for organizations to do.
Well, Chris, it's a great reminder because that same principle can apply in our personal lives. We hear about, frequent hand washing. Well, perhaps, with your kids like ours, we had this new policy where we're all washing our hands at the top of every hour, right? So the time we're up, the time we sleep, everybody, when the bell goes off, we're just going in and washing our hands because it's a winnable game for us and it's something we can control that might even have a disproportionate impact on our three boys' propensity to have dirty hands, but kind of turn it into a winnable game for them as well. Chris McChesney, lead author of The 4 Disciplines, thank you for your time today. Appreciate your insights.